There we go. Okay, we're rolling. Alright, Omer, we're starting.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. We express our praise and gratitude to Allah Ta'ala. We seek blessings on the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, so once again to recap, we're essentially in the second big unit, or the second chapter, so to speak, of Al-Baqarah. First was Ayah 1 to 39, the second is Ayah 40 through 123. That's essentially part 2. Part 2a is Ayah 40 to 74. 40 to 123 is the address to and about the children of Israel.
No, I think the mic is here and it's getting covered. That's what I'm.
Just means I won't be able to use the water for my dramatic pauses.
No, I'm just gonna grab some books.
Okay. Sorry? Yeah. So, I gotta get the right angle. So, what?
No, not you. Sorry. My bad.
Okay, so, Ayah 40 through 74 is the first half, 2a, and that is the story of the decline of the children of Israel from most favored status to disgrace status. And we're seeing a wave of that today. And also to recap, we said that the central problem in the story, in the behavior of the children of Israel, was lack of gratitude. That they received miracle upon miracle, luxury upon luxury, but they were not responding with gratitude. And then, as we discussed at the end of the section last time, that gratitude led to ultimately misbehavior. That gratitude led to, I forgot how we played it out. The ingratitude, yeah, that's an important point. The ingratitude opened the door for them to essentially misread, misuse text, which led them to shameless misbehavior. So, at the very end of our story, they were told to enter this town, eat whatever they liked, but they had to enter prostratingly, and they had to say this word hittatun, which is said to mean something like, astaghfirullah. But they changed the word from hittatun to something else, and instead of entering like prostratingly as though their heads were down, or even in sajda, according to some narrations, they entered like in a reverse sajda, something about what's sticking up, and then according to other narrations, they entered like in a spider walk. Right? Why was that happening? We're saying essentially that the problem was that they were reinterpreting or misinterpreting passages, misguided because of their lack of gratitude. But the result of this was that they were hit with a scourge from the sky, a plague for heaven, because of their fisk, their open, shameless misbehavior. So a question that I did not ask at the end of last time, which we'll start with today, is that they are hit with a natural calamity because of their misbehavior. Is that something that still happens? Like, for example, there's always some preacher that says, after a hurricane hits, because of their sins, right? What do you think? Is there any sound, is there any support for that? Like, for example, when Katrina happened, there was this talk that, okay, this is Louisiana, and they're all corrupt and this and that. You got to say something, Mama?
Well, I guess if we still believe that, miracles happen beyond, the Prophet's time, miracles still do happen, even if we don't, see them, I guess, then, I guess, on the other hand, you could say that it's because of, I don't think people should say, oh, it's because of their sins. Okay. But, I don't think it's, a human person's job to make that judgment. Okay. It's possible that it could be Allah's plan as well.
Okay. So you're saying that if we see some massive disaster, we don't really have the right to say it's because of their sins, but it may be because of their sins. Yeah? Your thoughts?
I think on the flip side, you could also think it could be, maybe it is because of their sins, or it could be a test on us as the outsiders saying on how we react to that. Okay. Either in a way where we say, you did it upon yourself, or okay, we need to help you.
Okay.
You know, so it could be a test on both sides in
Okay.
either way.
Okay. So no matter what, it would definitely be a test for the witnesses to see if we do anything to help them, and it's definitely a test for them in terms of just being challenged. But
I don't think that we're supposed to think of it as they're being punished for sins.
Okay.
At this
Why?
point. I don't know why, but I don't think we're supposed to think that anymore.
your thoughts?
Because and so in other words, when people are tested with stinting, they say that Allah has humiliated me. When people are tested with plenty, they say that my Lord has honored me. And that sort of tells us that neither is true.
Okay.
This is a situation where you're being, in other words, you may be, you can make it, it could be an argument, if you want to make the argument, well, that anything could be a punishment on you. Yes, even being given a lot of wealth could be a punishment, or it could be a trial or a test or a cause of trial or test or tribulation on you. But to say that something is a punishment specifically on the nation, whereas previously it seemed like there were cases where the nations were, they were tested to this, and then there comes the Quranic narration, then a disaster falls upon them, and then, in other words, that's their adab for a given nation.
Okay.
We believe that we've got a final message, and therefore there will be a final adab for our nation, which is the Yom Al-Qiyamah. Anything in between it would not necessarily fit that definition.
Okay.
That's my understanding, right or wrong, I guess.
Yes.
Omer, go ahead.
Yeah. So is that are we supposed to conceptualize that as being like neutral, not bad or not good? I mean, like.
Well, that's the question that I'm raising. So here we have the children of Israel that because of their misbehavior, they're hit with a plague. And so the question I'm raising is, if we see something like that happen, like a tsunami, hurricane, etc., earthquake, can we regard that as something similar? So let's say, okay, not me looking at them, but suppose I'm in the middle of an earthquake. Can I say that this is because of my sins?
Can't you
I don't think you can
like
I don't think you can say for certain that it's because of your sins, but
Okay.
I think you should definitely think that I should really check myself.
Okay.
Because then it would be a trial, right?
Because this goes back to it being a test. Okay. One fundamental difference between Naima, you were going to make a point. Okay.
Yeah, like same thing. If something happens, wouldn't you just think like, okay, I'm not sure if this is a punishment or a test, but you have to check yourself and see.
Okay, so putting these points together, starting with what Mohi said, if you look at all the previous nations that got destroyed, they got destroyed, right? There was nobody left except for the believers. And when we see an earthquake, you have all kinds of people that are still alive. I mean, I don't know of any earthquake, tsunami, natural disaster in my lifetime where everyone was destroyed. Yes, sir.
Maybe only the people who were meant to be destroyed were destroyed.
Could be. Yeah, but that we won't know. Yeah. So the point being that there you have a step-by-step formula. A messenger comes to them. They reject the messenger. They take something else as an ilah other than Allah. And then they behave corruptly. And then they get destroyed. Right? Except for the believers among them. And so that does not seem to be the case when we see these natural disasters happening. Okay. Even at the time of Omar, may Allah be pleased with him, there's a famine, right? And I don't know that we'd say that this is because of their sins. These are the Sahaba. And there was a plague also during the rule of Omar. Right? So that's one point to think about. So I'm saying that I would caution against looking at anything that happens in dunya as punishment. Right? Things that happen in dunya can be consequence, though. Right? I mean, if you stand in front of a train, you should expect to get splattered, right? And so there can be a consequence to my actions. So the big question is, can my actions still result in something happening at the nature level? Okay. There, you find all kinds of views. Let's look really briefly at Surah Nuh, Surah 71.
Actually, I have a question. What did
Yes.
you like? What is the difference between the consequences one and
Punishment?
Yeah.
So punishment, like consequences, basically think of cause and effects in terms of physics, right? All right, if you don't save up your money and then something happens and you don't have money, that's
It's not like.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go to Surah 71. That's a big book.
Sorry, do you want this one? This one's
That's all good. That's all good.
smaller. There's no Arabic in this one.
I've been spoiled by computers. Okay, so Surah 71, which I think we probably looked at before, is the report that Noah, peace be upon him, is giving to Allah Ta'ala, after he tried to do da'wah to his people. And have we looked at this surah at some point? Yeah. All right, let's go through the whole surah then. It's a really short surah. All right, who wants to be our official reader? All right, please read. I'm just going to keep interrupting you.
Okay. Behold, we sent Noah unto his people, saying, Warn thy people, ere grievous suffering befall them.
Air? Okay, that's cool, fine.
And Noah said, O my people, I am but a plain warner to you, sent to tell you, that you should worship God alone and be conscious of him. Now do pay heed unto me, so that he may forgive you some of your sins and grant you respite until a term known to him alone. But behold, when the term appointed by God does come, it can never be put back, if ye but knew.
Yeah.
And after a time Noah said, O my sustainer, verily, I have been calling upon my people night and day, but my call has only caused them to flee farther and farther away from thee.
Okay, so first part, Noah, peace be upon him, was told to call his people, and then he gives essentially, here's what he's been saying, and now he's giving the report. Every time I do da'wah to them, they run away further.
And behold, whenever I called unto them with a view to thy granting them forgiveness, they put their fingers into their ears and wrapped themselves in their garments of sin and grew obstinate and became yet more arrogant in their false pride. And behold, I called unto them openly, and behold, I preached to them in public, and I spoke to them secretly in private. And I said, Ask your sustainer to forgive you your sins, for verily he is all forgiving.
Okay, so everything is pretty straightforward. And now the next line is his promise that he gives them.
He will shower upon you heavenly blessings abundant.
Interesting translation. Okay. Because the basic translation is that he will send to you abundant rain. Okay. Keep going.
I'll read Asad translation. And will aid you with worldly goods and children, and will bestow upon you gardens and bestow upon you running waters. What is amiss with that you cannot look forward to God's majesty, seeing that he has created every one of you in successive stages? Do you not see how God has created 7 heavens in full harmony with one another, and has set up within them the moon as a light reflected, and set up the sun as a radiant lamp?
Okay, so call on Allah, he'll forgive you. Seek forgiveness from Allah, and he will pour rain upon you. Why can't you, why aren't you believing? Look at the whole world all around you. Keep going.
And God has caused you to grow out of the earth in gradual growth, and thereafter he will return you to it in death, and then he will bring you forth from it in resurrection. And God has made the earth a wide expanse for you, so that you might walk thereon on spacious paths. And Noah continued, O my sustainer, behold, they have opposed me throughout, for they follow people whose wealth and children lead them increasingly into ruin.
Okay, so one reason why they didn't follow before was that they were hiding behind arrogance. Another reason is because someone's preaching against him. And so they're following one of the elite of society.
And who has devised a most awesome blasphemy against thee, inasmuch as they said to their followers, Do not ever abandon your gods, abandon neither Wad nor Suwa, and neither Yagaputh nor Ya'uq nor Nasr. And so They have led many a one astray, hence ordain thou that these evildoers stray but farther and farther away from all that they may desire. And so because of their sins they were drowned in the great flood, and were doomed to suffer the fire of the hereafter. And they found none who could support them against God. And Noah prayed, O my sustainer, leave not on earth any of those who deny the truth. For behold, if thou dost leave them, they will always try to lead astray those who worship thee, and will give birth to nothing but wickedness and stubborn ingratitude. O my sustainer, grant thy forgiveness unto me and unto my parents, and unto everyone who enters my house as a believer, and unto all believing men and believing women of later times. And grant thou that the doers of evil shall increasingly meet with destruction.
Okay, great, thank you. So, after they rejected him, then Noah, peace be upon him, makes this huge prayer: destroy every single one of them. Do not leave a single one alive. Why is this prayer so fierce? You know, shouldn't he pray for Allah to forgive them, despite their misbehavior? What do you think?
Doesn't it say in like the next ayah, if you leave them, they will lead your servants astray?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they don't.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, they have chosen rejection, right? So they made the choice, right? And so he's asking for forgiveness for those people who are believers, forgive them, but the people who have chosen rejection, doom. Also, an argument is given is that this is a generation that invented idol worship. That you'll even find scholars will trace idols of different nations back to these idols that are mentioned in this surah. I don't know if that's just scholarly speculation or if there's some science there, but the point being that he called upon them, they rejected him. He promised them, if you seek forgiveness, you will get rain. They didn't seek forgiveness, but they got rain anyway. But not the kind of rain that gave them abundance. It was the rain that destroyed them. Back to our conversation, this issue of rain is one of the arguments given that that yes, your actions can have physical manifestations in nature. That might be difficult to swallow in terms of our modern thinking. But at the very least, your actions will affect your outlook, which will then affect how you respond to what's happening to you. So these we're making 2 points. One, that your action can definitely have an impact on what's happening in terms of physical manifestation. But then two, your actions will definitely affect how you respond to the things that happen to you physically. Good. So if you are someone who does good, meaning obedience to Allah Ta'ala, you're going to have a clearer understanding of reality. And so when things happen, you're going to have a clearer response system. If, however, you're doing sin, then, sin without seeking forgiveness, then when things happen to you, you're not going to think as straight in terms of the guidance level. Does that make sense?
In terms of, that's, just kind of covering some of the items we covered before. It was just, ثُمَّ بَعَثْنَاكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَوْتِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. In other words, there were already this was just, they've already even been, some of them have been brought to death and then brought back to life as a consequence. Yeah. And it's still, even that is to be, in a way, to me, is distinguishable from an adab, which is irreversible.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Yes.
Whereas these guys were, even in spite of their intransigence, this was different from disbelief to the point where they were given, yes, there was consequences, severe consequences to their actions, but they still had the opportunity to reform.
Absolutely.
If they chose to do so.
Yeah.
And so that could be, that's even so to say that, in other words, somebody could do something that has consequences in terms of, but they may see the consequence, they may face the consequences of it, even if in other words, that's different from being an adab.
Absolutely, yeah.
It may be, or even if it's something where people see, maybe there are people out there who they have something happen to them, and it's felt like this is a need for a reminder to them. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually meant this as a reminder to them. But to say that is different from saying it is an actual punishment.
Oh yeah,
as much
it's
as it a test.
It's not a punishment, but the point being that using the example of Noah seeking forgiveness and rain coming upon them, some make the argument that so the point being that your conduct can also have good consequences from nature too, right? Yeah. Okay. Look.
No, but can't some things, they can be a punishment though, right? If something happens to you, or something happens to someone, and after that they go further and further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that not a punishment?
From that perspective, you can argue that it's a punishment, but I don't want to use the word adab.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that, but it's a same thing.
Yes, but in theory, like there was the thing that Omer had talked about last week about this one person who made dua for plenty, and he was given plenty.
Yeah.
You could actually argue that plenty was a punishment upon him because that plenty took him by the analogy you made, that took him farther and farther away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not the actual, the physical action or the thing that happens to the people that would be considered a punishment as much as it is, as you stated, somebody kind of being drawn away from Allah that leads them down to their punishment, so to speak.
So, the other point, going back to the issue of nations that get destroyed, there is a philosophy of history that comes from that in terms of what happens to nations in our world. That there's a philosophy of history from Muslim scholars that argues that if you behave corruptly, you're setting yourself up to be overtaken by another nation. So in the past, when they were behaving corruptly, they got destroyed. But today, if you as a nation behave corruptly, then you're setting yourself up to be overtaken by another nation. And you kind of feel that that's what's going on right now with America right now. But this is and so before it was nature overtaking nations, now it's nations overtaking nations, but not punishment. Meaning the consequence of corrupt behavior is that Allah Ta'ala will replace you with another nation.
Can you read the 2 points that you said, the 2 lessons? One was, you're a believer in Allah, you will have a more clear understanding.
Okay. So again, back to the question of, does my iman affect, the natural world around me? So one argument is that potentially it can, using that example from Noah, peace be upon him, that my good conduct can cause something in the world around me. My bad conduct can cause something in the world around me. That's one level that you find some people arguing. But the simpler level where you find many more people arguing is that my good conduct, meaning my obedience to Allah Ta'ala, will help me to see clearly so that when I do get hit with something, I can take it for what it is. Which usually is a test. My bad conduct is essentially skewing my appreciation of reality. So if something bad happens to me, then I'm going to look at it as punishment. I'm going to look at it as all kinds of things that are not correct.
Okay.
Got it?
I see. All right, thank you.
Okay. Leading us to the next section. Ayah 60 to 63 is this section. 60 to 61. But then we have another one. So now, Moses and his people they've lost many of their luxuries. Okay. And Musa alayhi salam is praying to Allah Ta'ala for his people. وَإِذِ اسْتَسْقَى Musa. So he is praying for water. لِقَوْمِهِ, for his people. And we said, strike your rock, اِضْرِبْ بِعَصَاكَ الْحَجَرِ. So take your staff and hit this rock. Okay. Has that happened before? When did it happen before? Sorry? Yeah, when to split the sea. One interesting point is that what you find in our writings versus Jewish writings, our writings seem to focus more on the staff. Jewish writings seem to focus on the rock. That's what I've noticed.
And Christianity focuses on the water.
Maybe. That'd be pretty cool. Okay. So then what happens? 12 springs gushed forth. Each group knew its own place. So what is the significance of the 12 springs? This is more kind of like a review of material we discussed before.
The 12 tribes.
12 tribes, exactly. Each one knew its own place, so they all drank, and then they're told, eat and drink of the sustenance provided by Allah, and do not cause mischief in the earth. Good. So, they're essentially wandering around the desert. Musa alayhi salam makes a prayer for them, at least for water, granted, and then they have their each one has its own pool to drink from. What do you think about the fact that they're all drinking separately as opposed to all as one group?
It's dividing them.
Sorry?
It's dividing them.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
Bad thing? Seems like a bad thing, right? What about Hajj? On the one hand, when we go on Hajj, we're all praying together, right? The other hand, what happens when you're not doing the acts of worship? You go back to your people. Like on Hajj itself, you're going back to, okay, here's the American tent, here's the Pakistani tent, here's the other groups. What do you think? Is that bad?
It is a fact.
If this is a blessing, I mean, I think this is a blessing, so I wouldn't say it's bad.
Yeah, this is the point I'm leading to.
Yeah.
That if Allah Ta'ala is giving them, the 12 springs, then by definition it's a blessing, right? Why do we have the separate tents at Hajj?
Order.
Yeah, essentially you got to go with the people that speak your language. Like you'll see the Arab Africans and the non-Arab Africans. Why are they separated?
Because they speak Arabic.
Because there's those who speak Arabic and those who don't speak Arabic, right? And so the point being that it's a division, or division is a problem if you start thinking you're better. That's when it's a problem. But division in itself is not automatically a problem. We would call that diversity. Okay, so here it gets interesting again. Allah Ta'ala is again speaking to the children of Israel directly. Remember, you did this. And we were talking about the narrative. The ayah is being revealed in the 600s of our calendar, meaning a couple years after Hijrah, barely 2 years after Hijrah, about events that took place 1,500 years before. Okay. And Allah Ta'ala is saying, you did this. Remember, we're speaking about the narrative. You said, O Moses, Ya Musa, we can't persevere through, we can't handle just one food. Okay. What's wrong with that statement?
Ingrateful.
Okay, so it's ingratitude, but we're also seeing a subtle sign of ingratitude. They're still given manna and quail.
Oh.
They have two foods.
What is manna again?
It's like maple syrup type thing, tree sap.
Right.
I mean, I've heard all kinds of theories. In fact, there's that famous dessert store in Dearborn. What is it?
Shatila.
Is it Shatila?
I think so.
Yeah, and so I found this thing that was called manna and quail. I assume it's probably the nastiest of all the desserts. That's why it has such a lofty name. So I just gave it to this couple. I don't know what they thought of it, but a subtle point about ingratitude is again that you feel like you have less than you have, right? So we can't handle one food, but they're actually being given two foods. So now they pray to Allah Ta'ala, or they tell Moses, pray to your Lord to provide for us all these vegetables, right? Cucumbers, garlic, beans, onions. I had a student in a different Quran class who said she was diagnosed as being diabetic, and based on this ayah, she thought that her doctor's wrong. She should keep eating meat because vegetables are less than meat. And I told her, stop what you're thinking, listen to your doctor. Right? Yeah. Okay, so they ask for all these vegetables. Moses, peace be upon him, says, are you going to trade in what's worse or what's better for what is worse? What is wrong with their prayer? There's a few things that are wrong. One, ingratitude. It's ingratitude that's leading them to just get sick of the food that they're eating. Okay.
Which is food from heaven, right?
Sorry?
The food is from heaven, right?
Food's from heaven and they're getting bored with it.
Wait, what food?
Man and quail.
And, well,
It used to come, how did it used to come to them? Do you know?
So, two theories. One is the more modernly acceptable theory. The other is the more miraculous one. And considering this is all miracles, either one works. So one theory is that the food is already coming fully prepared for them. So I'm guessing maybe even the dishes too, right? If they can see the sea splitting, then this is not far-fetched, right? And the other is that it was very easy for them when they were searching for the food to hunt it and to find it, right? Either one works, right? So we're saying one problem of ingratitude is that they even feel like they have less than they have. The ingratitude is also probably contributing to their boredom with the food itself.
But isn't that like against like the properties of like heavenly food?
That they should not get bored with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
No, but like no, isn't that like something like the food from heaven is like so different and so great that you won't get bored of it? Maybe God
Or should not, yeah.
Or maybe it was
I'm
purpose.
saying it's a further statement on the condition of these people at this point, right?
Yeah.
That they're even getting bored with heavenly food.
Yeah, like it's weird. They don't like onions.
I have a
Okay.
thing. Well, I think maybe it was the moralistic one, the one where it was they can easily find the animals.
What?
Because in my opinion, if they find the animals, kill it, and prepare it themselves, I guess they could get tired of it.
Oh, interesting. But what if it's being handed to them and they're still getting bored with it? Say, for example, like, you know, you're a kid and your parents buy you like the most awesome toy, and then like 6 months later you get bored with it. Does that ever happen? Like, has that ever happened to anyone?
6 months later?
6 minutes later.
6 minutes later. 6 minutes later is when you're in your 40s. Yeah. Good. Okay. So what are some of the things that are wrong with their request?
well, actually, one thing that always struck me about
Yeah.
this particular thing is that look at how they're asking. They're saying,
Absolutely.
"Your Lord."
Yeah.
Ask
So
your Lord.
you ask on
you
our
ask
behalf.
your Lord. In other words, first of all, if they could, it would have been perfectly fine if they had just, they had been grateful what they had and said, "Allah, thank you for what you have given
Sure.
me, but could we also have this because I
Yeah.
missed this?"
So-
That would have been a different dua.
First problem is the adab in the way that they're making the request, right? This goes hand in hand with ingratitude, right? So it could be, they could have said, look, we know we're supposed to be more grateful for this. Can you help us be more grateful? Can you give us somewhat more variety, right?
They're missing like a few food groups.
Yeah. So they could have done that, but they're saying, Moses, you call on your Lord to give us this. Okay. What else is a problem in terms of the request? And this is a big lesson on the nature of dua. Yes, sir?
You should like make your own duas. Like you're not supposed to tell other people what you say in your duas.
Sure. I'll categorize that as part of the adab of duas. But no.
Like, isn't it like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you more than what you're asking for?
Okay.
He's giving you better, so why are you asking for something?
Okay, so they're asking according to what they think is better for them.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem. So their sense of priorities are still skewed. As we said, this is also related to why they even changed the words, right, in last week. In addition, what else is wrong?
Mary wanted to say something.
No,
Yes, Mary!
no.
Will someone... I was going to make
I
a
don't know what
joke.
she's talking about. Please mute us again. It was.
So,
She said because their lives were so much better before.
No, I'm sarcasm.
Yeah, she said it sarcastically.
That's not even important.
You want to go back to?
Oh, as if,
West
like
Time.
their lives are so much better. Why can't they be grateful for what they have?
yeah, I mean, they're in slavery.
Yeah.
Okay. The fact that they're praying for
I
vegetables...
found one thing.
Yes, sir. Let's hear it.
Well, I found it sort of interesting now that you said that they were slaves. It's usually in a lot of in a lot of stories of the prophets, the slaves are the first people to accept.
Yeah. And here, they've been taken from slavery, the worst possible condition, to the best worldly condition. And it's like they forgot that they were in slavery. Sure. So, by praying for all these vegetables, they're also praying for an agrarian life. They're praying for a life of agriculture without realizing it.
Like working?
It's not going to just come up from nowhere.
Yeah, they're asking for plants. And so the point is that whenever I make a dua for anything, I'm also, without realizing it, I'm implicitly praying for everything that goes along with it. So they are praying for variety in their food, or that's what they want. They interpret that, okay, the variety that's going to satisfy them is to have all these vegetables. But to get that, they're going to have to live a life of agriculture as farmers. Now, what's a farmer's life like? All day long, you're working. So they're actually asking for an even worse life than what they have. So, in the commentaries, there's a story of one of the companions that's often connected with this ayah. There's this companion who got really sick for a long time, and everyone's trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked him, did you pray for anything? And he's thinking, he said, yeah, I prayed to Allah Ta'ala to give me sabr, like to make me more patient. So he got it. Allah Ta'ala made him sick. And by making him sick, it forced him to develop his patience. So the point being that whenever it is I'm praying for anything, I'm also, whether or not I realize it, praying for everything that goes along with it. So when I'm praying for something, I should also pray that Allah Ta'ala make this easy for me. So for example, if you're praying, oh Allah, get me into med school, you're praying for everything that goes along with that.
That was my question, so
Yeah.
I was like...
Yeah. I've taught undergrads for a few years now, so I know the first question that comes up. So this is a big, heavy lesson in the nature of du'as. Pray for anything and everything. Keep praying for anything and everything. Ask Allah to make it easy for you. Ask Allah to make it best for you.
Do you really have to ask it to be best for you? Because...
Doesn't Allah Ta'ala just give you what's best for you anyway?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
And what if what is best for you is different than what you want?
Then that's better, right?
I don't know what you want.
Unless you can make dua that Allah make what you want best for you.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're saying.
Isn't that bad?
I always have a
Why?
fear of
It's Allah Ta'ala.
Because what if I want... No, but what if I want something and it's not good for me?
So you ask Allah to make it best for you.
I always have this fear of asking.
Say, I want to go to medical school and I want Allah to make this the right choice for my life.
In my dunya and my akhirah.
Make dua.
Yeah.
For dunya and
Yeah.
akhirah. No harm in asking for whatever he wants.
I had a student who was my age who literally asked, "You can do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's Allah." Right? Yeah. You're making one?
I always think about that, and I'm like, okay, whenever I make my dua, and I say that, then I have this fear, what if what's best for me is a trial, and I need to figure it out through a trial? That's
So
always
make
so
it best
scary.
for me, make it easy for me.
Make it easy for me, yeah.
So think about that. Okay, so if you're asking Allah Ta'ala, please grant me paradise, okay, aren't you asking for a difficult life?
No.
So that's why we say Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana, right? Wa fil akhirati hasana, and wa qina adhaban nar. Grant me the good, grant me the best of this life. Hasana, meaning beautiful, happy, all those things, and the best in the hereafter, and protection from the fire. So if I'm getting the best of the hereafter, don't send me to hell first, for sins. Get those forgiven so I go straight to heaven.
That sounds so greedy.
Yeah, and this is
And
something.
Allah, I can
This is
Even all.
yeah.
Allah, I can be
Why
as
not?
greedy as I want. Thank you
but
very
it doesn't
much.
sound right.
Yeah, this is going against this ethic that we have in our community. That so many times I get exactly these concerns. Are you allowed to do that? Of course, this is Allah Ta'ala. Yeah, call upon me and I will provide. And then on top of that, it sounds selfish, but
It
this isn't
doesn't sound
selfish.
grateful.
But what if there's
What?
more for you?
But if you're asking Allah Ta'ala for it, isn't that by definition gratitude? So add
How
gratitude
does
to
it
it.
make sense?
Thank you for what you've given me.
So
But give me more.
in Solomon's class, we had this discussion. I asked them, okay, what's big enough? And we said, is world peace big enough?
Yeah.
And is that anybody? So we kind of sort of. Is it okay to pray for an ice cream cone? Everybody had their hands up. Is it okay to pray? Is it okay to pray for world peace? Everybody raised their hands up and said yes.
Interesting. Wow.
And so it's like, of course, like it's because of course that's something good to pray for.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, why? So then we kind of went through this whole thing of here's the world, here's the sun, here's the solar system, here's the universe. How big is the world in relation to the rest of the universe? Not very big at all. So why is that? So why is it okay for you okay to pray for this little for peace on this little speck? Why is that? That's not big for. That's not that big, right? Why is it that big to you? And so we're just kind of going through the exercise, the idea that everything is small to Allah. So why do you have to worry about whether it's big enough to pray for or not? Everything is small for Allah.
But like,
Yeah,
if you want something, right?
Yeah.
But you're like, Ya Allah, make this best for me, this thing that I want. But like, what if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has something better for you? Like, why would you make that?
Then ask for that too.
If you're saying make it best for you, then he'll make it best for you.
Yeah. And if you can give me something better, then please give me something better. That will make me even happier.
Better than the best.
Yeah, and part of the reason we're emphasizing this point is that there is this like censorship that takes place in our community when it comes to du'as. Like, you shouldn't ask for these things, and you shouldn't ask for this. And we're saying, we're talking about Allah Ta'ala, ask for anything and everything.
Right. So my mom's I get this kind of, my mother's very, she's very cautious. No, I'm going to ask to be among the Sadiqun, and I don't want to be tested to do it. So I'm going to ask for it. And who can stop me from asking it? It's Allah. Who are you to stop me from asking for it?
Absolutely. And okay, so let's take it to its logical conclusion. Okay. If it's not appropriate for me to ask for these worldly things from Allah Ta'ala, then it's also not appropriate for me to work for them either. Okay. Because it's up to Allah Ta'ala whether or not I get it. So if I'm going through my studies so I can have a comfortable life, inshallah, right? And I'm saying it's inappropriate for me to ask for luxuries. And it's also inappropriate for me to even go through all those studies, right? Contradiction, dun dun dun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, by all means, ask for all those things, right? And have a demeanor of gratitude. Right? Because the problem is, if I'm ungrateful, Allah Ta'ala can give me twice what I'm asking for, and I'll feel like I'm not getting anything, right? If I'm grateful, what does Allah Ta'ala say? If you're grateful, He'll give you more. Okay. And so the heart of it is gratitude.
Actually, this was exactly what we were talking about on our way here when we were summarizing last week. That the issue, it was like, why is the issue not greed instead of ingratitude? Because isn't it really central that they're greed and they keep wanting more and wanting more? And Moni's point was, well, you can have greed and still be grateful.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Sounds like they're not incompatible.
Yeah. Did you accept it? What do you think? You saying no? Okay, let's take it.
Find the time to sit and come up with a whole list of things you want.
Yeah, why not?
Well, if you're in that frame of mind, then you're probably not very happy. So.
I don't think so.
Maybe we're taking greed with like a negative connotation, like.
Okay.
You know.
So let's take it really far.
Let's take Gordon Gekko and his greed component out of it.
Okay.
Let's just talk about more. Is it okay for me to want more?
Yeah, it's
Why?
That's not. Isn't that greed?
When someone says more, it seems so much happier.
Okay, so let's take it even further back. Is it possible to be selfless?
No.
Can you come up with any example of something that is purely selfless, meaning I do this and I'm not getting anything out of it at all?
Because ultimately you get the reward from those $1.
Okay.
Like,
You will get something out of it.
Okay.
ultimately,
It'll
like
make you feel better in some way.
Is it possible for me to do something where I get nothing out of it?
no,
Not even in parenting?
no, because like
No, well,
you feel like you get nothing out of
Here's the
it,
counter
but
argument that somebody will give you. I'm an atheist, and I'm doing things just strictly out of goodness.
Yeah.
Not because of expecting any reward.
But an atheist must feel good after doing that, right?
Yeah.
But what if someone says I'm not doing it to feel good, I'm just doing it because it's the right thing to do.
But they
lying.
still
But you did
get
the right thing, so you
goodness.
feel like
Yeah,
a
you
good
feel. Yeah,
person.
if you did the right thing, you feel good about it.
Okay, so essentially you're saying that there's no such thing as a selfless act.
I'm trying to think of like something in the prophet's time, but everything gets rewarded.
Okay?
Unless
So-
it's involuntary.
I mean, when you talk about parenting, it's like getting up in the middle of the night every 2 hours to feed this baby that's whining and crying and pooping in a diaper, and you're like, what do you? Oh my God! Like, what do you get out of that? Well, you get this beautiful little baby. I mean, you know, like there's always.
But is that why you're doing it, or you're doing it just because you
Because you
just
love
have
this.
to?
No, well, I mean, some people
It
probably
would be
just do
worse
it
for
because
them
they
to
have
starve.
to.
So
Okay.
you're doing it so they
But is that what's going on through your mind?
Yeah,
That I don't want my
stop
baby to
crying.
starve?
Because they want to stop
Oh,
crying.
you're doing it
At
so you
some
can go
point,
back
I'm
to
sure it
bed.
is.
Yeah?
Not quite. I mean,
To turn it off.
there are some people that will do it, but like they really don't want to, but they'll do it just because they
Fine.
have to.
Fine. But is it possible that one of those times that I'm getting up, I'm saying I, as the man, getting up for the baby, it's purely selfless. It's just not thinking about anything. I have to do this.
You're protecting your lineage.
I don't think
You're
that's
starving.
really
You're saying there's always something selfish.
No, because if the baby
Okay.
keeps crying, you're not going to sleep.
Okay, so you're saying there's always something selfish.
There's something there, yeah.
Then that means there's good selfish and bad selfish.
But there's
Right.
not selfless.
If there's nothing selfless, then we're saying everything is selfish. Yeah? I'm
And
doing
by saying everything's selfish, then that's another way of saying nothing's selfish.
if everything's selfish, then nothing's selfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it
No, I
equals
have
itself out.
teenagers. There are definitely things you do that you do not benefit. And now I have to go pick up my son.
Avoiding humiliation is a huge incentive with teenagers.
Avoiding the bigger problems. Yeah. So the point being that if I'm doing something only for reward from Allah Ta'ala, right? That I'm doing this because I want Allah Ta'ala to reward me. Is that bad?
No.
No, we're saying that's good. So there's good selfishness, right? And so the same thing applies to dua, right? That dua, just by virtue of the fact that I'm asking Allah Ta'ala, that's already a good thing. And then on top of that, if I'm asking something that's purely selfish in a worldly sense, purely selfish in an akhirah sense, it's not necessarily bad. But the heart that I need to have when I'm making the request is a heart of gratitude. Any other thoughts? Okay, because their issue gets worse. Musa alayhi salam is saying, are you going to exchange what's better for what is worse? So then he says, go down to this town, and this is where you rip on all the Egyptians, because the word for town here is Misr, and which is Egypt, and yeah. Okay, nobody left. Okay, so go down to this town, and you will find whatever you want, and then they were hit with disgrace. They were covered with humiliation and misery, and they brought upon themselves the wrath of Allah. Boom. Now think back to way back when we were discussing Al-Fatiha. We said that out of adab, we don't speak of the wrath of Allah, even though some Jummah khutbah people seem to only want to speak about the wrath of Allah. But out of adab, we speak about the good things about Allah.
Actually, sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
I highlighted this, or I don't know, whatever. It says, like, you know that line says, would you exchange better for worse? Like, that's what worries me about, like, making dua, like, oh, not, like, in general, but, like, asking for something specific, like, that I think is best for me, because,
Yeah.
like, I don't know what is best for me, right? And so, like, is the problem with their dua then, like, they didn't say, like, make it best for us?
So there's multiple problems. One problem is because of their ingratitude, their whole sense of what's better and worse for them is already skewed, it's backwards, right? Another problem is the bad adab in terms of how they're asking for it, which is also motivated by ingratitude, right? And then all these other things, that they're asking for this and they don't realize they're asking for a more difficult life.
But, like, to correct it, they should have said, like, make it best for us.
They should have added something like, please forgive us, and then make it best for us, make it easy for us, all those things. I mean, and so like when you're saying, for example, you don't have to say the words "make this easy for me." Like when you think of the names of Allah, one is Latif, right? And so, sorry. Latif, it might translate as something like that, but essentially the one who makes things easy, the one who facilitates things, right? Yeah. So there's a guidelines in terms of making du'as. So here it says categorically they're hit with the anger, the wrath of Allah. Right? Ba'u bi ghadbin min Allah. Okay. Why? Because they were rejecting the signs of Allah. They were rejecting the ayat of Allah. Okay. And that led them to even do the most horrendous thing possible, which was to kill messengers. Which messengers did they kill? So, John the Baptist, they believed that they killed Jesus, peace be upon him. And then why did they even go through that process? Because they were in disobedience, they're in rebellion. So we have essentially, they're making this dua, and it leads essentially to their disgrace. It leads them to their disgrace. But the cause of the disgrace was disobedience to Allah. And that disgrace also led them to do horrific things too. They said the disobedience led them to do horrific things. Okay. And so now they're in this state of disgrace. And I mentioned at the beginning of these discussions on the children of Israel, do not equate the children of Israel with the Jews. And this now gets answered in ayah number 62. Okay, ayah 62 is the interfaith ayah that everybody likes to quote during.
Where's that ayah? Do not equate. Where is that?
I was saying when we were introducing the whole topic, that Bani Israel is not automatically synonymous with Jews.
But like, you know how they say like, oh, like Christians say like, we don't have any problem with the Jews because it's not the Jews of our time, whatever that, you know. But if the Jews themselves view themselves as part of, you know, like a one,
But don't the Orthodox Jews consider themselves as like that lineage and?
Well, so the lineage is a big issue there in the Orthodox Jews, especially more than the Reformed Jews. But when I've asked different Jews, who are the children of Israel to you? Some have said, yeah, they're like the original Jews, and others have said they're like the predecessors of the Jews and stuff like that. And depending on who you ask today, you get different answers. Another thing is that religion in America kind of like, you know, skews everybody's religion anyway. You know?
Why are you saying like that? Like Jewish people view themselves as like, that's us, like they're talking to us. So.
Some. Okay, in Medina, when it says, O children of Israel, the people who are being addressed are the Jews of Medina. That's definitely the case. What I'm saying is today, or since then, it's a big question mark.
So, okay, I got you.
Like I was making a couple key points. One is, look at these people as behaving completely like normal human people, right? As opposed to people who are innately wicked, which is how we often frame this. And another is that by saying they're innately wicked, then commonly you hear this notion that the Jews of today are innately wicked. I think it's a big, big blunder.
So in the Quran, whenever it says "little children of Israel," it's always talking to the.
Well, it could be talking about Christians too, right? Because Christians are still part of that lineage. Okay. And so the real answer is that it's talking to you if you believe it's talking to you.
If you think you're one of the children of Israel, it's
yeah. So the interfaith ayah. What time is it? Oh, okay, cool. إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصابئين. So those who believed, and those who are hadu, and those who are nasara, and the sabi'in. And everyone's going to say, well, who's the sabi'in? Next point. Man amana billahi wal yawmil akhiri. So who or whomever believes in Allah and the last day, wa amila salihan, and they do right, فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. They will have the reward with their nourisher, their Rabb. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And they will not have any fear, nor shall they grieve. Let's take it backwards. This point we've already discussed before, so it's more review. They need have no fear, nor shall they grieve. What's the relationship between fear and grief? Because this is a small phrase that we find over and over again in the Quran.
Fear is something that you fear in the future. Grief is in the past.
Yeah, so what's the relationship between fear and grief? Fear, I don't want this thing to happen. Grief, this bad thing has happened that I don't want. So the point is that, one, they're going to have a life, in their heart is going to be a life of contentment, meaning everyone's still going to have fear at times and grief at times. But don't live in fear and don't live in grief. That if I lose a loved one, naturally I should grieve. I have to go through a process of grieving. Or I might have fear about all kinds of things. That part's all natural. But rather than live in the past and the future, live in the moment. Okay.
Can I just say that has been, like, just that whole statement has just changed my viewpoint on a lot of things.
Like, for the better?
For the better,
Okay.
yeah. And then, like, people that I, talk to that are complaining about this and that and constantly going back and, like, living through their past and, like, grieving over it. I'm like, okay, what does Omer Mozaffar say?
Yeah, it kind of scares me if you put it that way, but...
not that, but, like, I mean, like, what did we learn, like, it's just that has really helped to kind of get over things and
that's
be
the
able
key.
to move forward,
Yeah, I mean, this is the issue, that it's easy to live in fear and it's easy just to live in mourning. If only this happened, if only that happened, why did I do this, why did I not do that? And it's easy to fall into that trap, and the point is to live in the moment that you're in. Yeah. Okay. Those who believed and those who are Hadu. What do your translations say?
Jewish. Hadu is simply translated as
Jews.
It says Jewish?
Jews.
Anybody have anything else?
Jewish.
This one says Jewish scriptures. Okay. Hadu is Judean. And so in Nasara, you guys all have Christians? Mm-hmm. Nasara is the people of Nazareth. Nazarenes.
Isn't that like a Christian word?
Meaning that's where Isa alayhi salam's from. He's from Nazareth.
There's a Catholic school near my, like I know people with like Nazareth Academy.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it's a famous school. Yeah. So the point I'm making here is that even translating this as Jewish or Christian, we have to be careful. The literal translation is those who believed, past tense, those who are Judean, okay, and those who are of Nazareth. Okay. And then the Sabi'in, which we'll talk about in a second. So the literalist translation is referring to a location. Is what the prophets went to particular nations, right? So Bani Israel included the generation of Moses, peace be upon him, and so many generations later. But Hadu is a specific group of people, and Nasara is a specific group of people. Okay. Sabi'in. All kinds of scholarly speculation about who the Sabi'in are. The most common answer I keep coming across is that this is a group somewhere in what is modern-day Iraq. And they might have some lineage with the Zoroastrians, but they seem to be monotheists. But Allah knows best. The part that I think is interesting is that if it's mentioned in the Quran, it might be fair to say they might still be around. So this ayah is not automatically saying that Jews and Christians can go to paradise. Okay. This ayah, in terms of the historical reading of this, is answering the question, what happens to the people who were around before Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Okay. Just like we would ask in terms of Christianity, okay, what happens to all the people before Jesus who were not able to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior, right? So this is commonly taken historically, saying that, those who are of the Judeans, those who are Nazarenes, those who are the Sabi'in, whoever believed in Allah in the last day, they need to have no fear, they're going to have the reward. Okay. That's how this is actually read historically. Okay.
We can use that in a lot of
interfaith. Yeah. I'm saying.
I mean, nobody's translation here has.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than Jewish and Christian.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. So then let me ask you this question. In our tradition, is it possible for a non-Muslim in the year 2014, so is it possible for a non-Muslim after the time of the Prophet, peace upon him, to go to paradise?
What's a non-Muslim?
Dun, 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 dun.
Define your term.
Ellipsis.
Yeah, exactly.
Islam's around now.
Sorry?
Because Islam's here.
Yeah. So let's say someone who does not identify him or herself as a Muslim, and
What is most like? Do you mean someone who submits to God or someone who like follows Islam?
someone who does not accept the Prophet Muhammad as a prophet. What do you think?
That's the question. Can they go to heaven?
Is it possible for that person to go to heaven?
Only Allah knows the answer.
Okay, so the answer is, of course, only Allah knows the answer. We'll agree upon that. So what do you think beyond that?
Well, it's like I think about that one guy, that I mentioned last week. What was his name?
Scott Alexander?
Scott Alexander.
Everyone
I
thinks
mean,
like he's a secret Muslim or
Well,
he's a secret federal agent.
What's really crazy, yeah, no kidding. I mean, what's really crazy is that he talked about the Prophet so like lovingly, and how much respect and all of this, but he didn't really say he's like he said he basically equated him to a saint.